But first we're going to talk about a little bit what CMMC is. And we'll do that, and then we'll get down to the levels. We'll talk about some of the domains, what it means to get an audit and certification, what that currently means now, and what it will mean in the future. And we'll get a little bit into what level 1 is, level 2, and your process. Basically, high-level overview. CMMC is a way for the government to control its suppliers, the vendor risk management in the commercial side, and now it's supply chain risk management that the government will fall into. And they're concerned because certain information has got out there to our frenemies and enemies, and it's very easy. When you're dealing with the government, they tend to focus on things that are highly classified and not to pay too much attention on unclassified data. However, there's information that is unclassified but can be bound together in what we would call something like business intelligence to find out some things about, what the government is doing. Particularly, the DoD is pushing forward. This is primarily for people with DoD contracts, although some other government agencies have expressed interest in applying CMMC as well. DHS has expressed interest. I know the Veterans Administration has talked about CMMC, so it's something that's going out there. And they're focusing on 2 types of information: federal contract information and controlled unclassified information. Federal contract information is the one that is going to be the most pervasive, but it is the least defined by the government. It would be statements of work, invoices, labor categories, RFPs, anything that you would need to actually manage and maintain a federal contract. That would be FCI, and that maps to currently CMMC level 1. We'll talk a little bit about what level 1 is in a bit. Controlled unclassified information is also kind of squishy and undefined. What has been discussed is ITAR information. ITAR is data that is under export control. That is a subset of CUI. So for all of you out there that are handling ITAR information as part of your DoD contracts, you have CUI. That's it. CUI can also be software code. It can be system diagrams. It can be schematics and diagrams for different parts that manufacturers will do. So it can be a variety of different things. Again, I also brought out the issue of PII. PII for government employees is considered CUI. PII for your own employees is not. So this is what all the fuss is about. This is what the government is concerned about protecting. And obviously the first step is for the government to identify what information is going to be CUI, and we'll get started from there. When I refer to the different levels, level 1 is concerned with FCI, level 2 builds on level 1 and is concerned with CUI. Level 3 is another subset of NIST controls, and that is for generally the spooky secret squirrel stuff that not a lot of government contractors are dealing with. In fact, I think the latest percentages I've seen out of the DoD IT, which is controlling CMMC now, less than like 10% of the defense industrial base, which is over 300,000 vendors, are going to be considered to be CMMC level 3. For level 3 folks, They're going to be, that's going to be done by government auditors. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get down to what it means for audit and certification. Level 1, which is what most contractors need to be concerned with, is kind of basic. And there's only 17 controls to worry about, which is excellent news. For CUI, level 2, they map the controls into domains or families. And this slide just shows what the different domains are. If you're an IT person or you have any sort of background in IT, these domains should look kind of familiar to you. And it's just a way of carving up the elephant, so to speak. Now, when we talk about audit and certification, those words get thrown around a lot, and I just want to clarify some things for you. An audit is the action that you take to become certified. There's only a few, I think there's maybe only 20 or 30 audit companies out there who've gone through the certification process themselves to go through training to get their auditors certified themselves to actually perform an audit. And this is kind of normal, because whenever auditing companies are out there, if you've ever worked for a company that's had an external financial audit, or you've had various sort of ASD or ASM audits, quality assurance, healthcare has HIPAA and high-tech, retailers have PCI audits from MasterCard and Visa. Whatever the framework is, the auditors who are going to be performing those audits need to prove, themselves that they are capable of actually understanding the framework, understanding the underlying business processes to be able to come in and effectively do an audit. So that's what's happening right now, is interested companies are going out and they're going to the third-party independent organization called the CyberAB, which is actually managing the CMMC training under the direction of the DoD. So the DoD is the originator, but the CyberAB is the vendor, so to speak, who actually manages the training and will actually, once certifications, the audits are happening, and the auditors will submit the certification reports, the CyberAB is the one who actually signs off on it. So the audits will happen for level 2 and level 3. And once the audits are completed, then the CyberAB will sign off and give you your certification. Right now, certifications are expected to last for 3 years. One of the differences between the first iteration of CMMC and CMMC version 2, which is what we're looking at now, is the whole concept of having open items on your plan of actions and milestones. Your plan of actions and milestones are basically the result of the gap assessment that you do. We'll talk a little bit about that when we're talking about how you prepare. Your system security plan, or SSP, basically defines how your IT infrastructure is meeting the CMMC controls. Whatever you're not doing goes on to your plan of actions and milestones. It's basically, you can think of it as a checklist of things you have to do. Right now, until the final CMMC rule comes out, which is sometime, I'm doing air quotes, this month, right now, what is being said is that you're allowed to have open items on your plan of actions and milestones. For example, if you're ready to go through an audit, you're allowed to have non-critical controls open on your plan of actions and milestones. And what this really means is that you're not expected to be perfect. And we'll talk a little bit about this in a few minutes when we talk about how CMMC preparation is a process. Again, what comes down to who needs to be audited is going to depend on the final rule. We have seen information coming out where only certain types of CUI will require a third-party audit. Other types of CUI, which they are considered non-prioritized, may not need an audit. So in other words, we don't know what types of CUI will require a third-party audit and which ones will not. So we're waiting on the final rule for that. If you are audited, it will be on you to find a third party, an auditing company. What I always tell customers is when you're ready to go for that, get multiple bids on how much the audit will cost. There's no single set. The government does not get involved with how much money it will be for an auditor to come in for a week and take a look at what you have. They're not involved. So there's going to be competition out there. Just a reminder before we talk about FCI and level 1. Not every contract has CUI. And just because a prime contractor has CUI doesn't mean that you will. The DoD and the Cyber AB is really pushing prime contractors to think about who they're sharing CUI with of all of their subcontractors. So it's quite possible that you could be on a contract and you don't see CUI at all because you just don't need to. So when you hear people discussing the concept of a flow down means that, you know, if the CUI is there, then a prime needs to know that all of their subs are capable of being level 1 compliant. That doesn't mean that they're going to require all of their subs to be level 2 as well if they're holding CUI. So what this means in practical terms, if you have a contract with the DoD, you need to be level 1 compliant. And again, that's very much doable. I strongly suspect that a lot of you are doing these 17 controls or a subset of these 17 controls already. It's not hard to get to, and we'll get to that in a little bit. CMMC right now only applies to new contracts, and any expenses that you have to become compliant can be a allowable contract expense. So you can charge back what you need to what you have undergone to become compliant. And there are also tax credits out there, especially the state of Maryland is very forward thinking in terms of cybersecurity tax credits to get ready. All right. Preparation for CMMC level 1. This is what most of us as government contractors will need to be concerned with right away. You don't require a third-party audit for this. This is something that you will attest to, that your president or CEO will attest to this every year, every 3 years, and say, yes, we have all of the 17 controls implemented. So one of the first things that you will need to do is identifying any systems where federal contract information is. Those can be your accounting system, your timekeeping system, anything where you're going to be storing the nuts and bolts of how you're managing and maintaining your government contracts. If you're a manufacturer, FCI could be in your, your MRP system. If you're just, and this does not have to be all digital information. If you're getting invoices or diagrams, schematics, whatever from the government, and it's coming in hard copy, that's still FCI. So wherever you're storing FCI in whatever form, you need to identify that. And from there, you can go on and think about one of the other major points of becoming level 1 compliant is making sure that all of your endpoints have some type of endpoint protection, antivirus, something strong there, that you have patching enabled on all of your endpoints and servers. Patching can be Windows Update. It can be, if you're a Mac shop, it can be, the regular Mac OS update. You can have an automated system in place. It doesn't matter how you do it. And this is something that I remind people is the CMMC framework is not there to tell you what type of products you need, what type of, services you need. They just tell you, you need to do this. How you do it is your business. You just need to get it done. Physical security, whether you have a home office you're operating out of, you're in a manufacturing shop, you have your own office, there's physical security controls that, again, are very basic. Locks on your doors, do you have badges, do you have any sort of cameras or, anything to monitor, any sort of alarm system, physical controls inside your office. If you have hard copy, can you lock your office doors? Do you have a lockable file cabinet, etc.? Again, all things that people are probably doing now in some form. The other part is data destruction. What do you do with your machines when it's time to go to that big recycler in the sky? You can destroy things yourself. You can wipe them. You can go out to your garage and bash them up with a sledgehammer. You can send them to a company to have the drives drilled. Doesn't matter how. You need to have some type of data destruction process. Basic application security. Everybody needs their own user ID and password. No shared accounts. You have access to things that only, your employees need and nothing more. The concept of least access. Those are all very basic things. You put those together in those 17 controls in your SSP and POAM. If you have anything on your POAM, you need to address those and get those done. So basic stuff, having a network firewall, whether it's part of your ISP offering or you have a third-party firewall yourself. Again, application controls, data destruction, physical security, patching, antivirus. These are all basic controls. And everyone can do them, which is why they're level 1, and it's why most people are going to be, this is the only thing that you're going to see out of CMMC. If you do have CUI, and you do, or you strongly suspect that you might, or you are wanting to put yourself in a position where you can bid on contracts where CUI is going to be bandied about, then you're not dealing with 17 controls, you're dealing with 110. And this corresponds to the NIST 800-171, which has been around for quite a while. And this is designed for, again, basic cybersecurity, health, and controls for sensitive information. And again, the process is similar to what we would do for level 1. Level 1, you had to identify the systems and the machines that you use to access those systems for federal contract information. Now you have to look at FCI and CUI and identify where that is. If you're using cloud providers, then you need to make sure that your cloud providers that you're storing CUI in are FedRAMP moderate certified. FedRAMP moderate is, it's older, much older than CMMC, but it's basically a way for the government to be assured that any cloud service, Google, Box, Microsoft, any hundreds, are they themselves secure to hold government information. So FedRAMP's been around for quite a few years, and it's designed to make sure that state, federal, local government data is secured and properly managed by the vendors. So you need to take a look at your cloud data and what CUI is stored in the cloud and where it's stored. And then you would go through all of those 17 domains that we saw the slide previous. And what I recommend is attacking each domain. There could only be a few controls in it, and start working away with that. Create your SSP and your POAM and start just working through each domain and grabbing and just seeing what you have. Document that. It's like, yes, we're doing this, and moving on. Whatever you're not doing becomes your plan of actions and milestones, your POAM. In the process of doing this, you're going to create security policies that say, what you're going to do. You'll do your procedures, which is how you're going to do it. And those procedures, whenever I talk to people about documenting these things, documentation can be in a workflow. It can be a template. It doesn't have to be a Word or a PDF document. It has to be workable for you and your employees, or if you're outsourcing your IT and you're working with a managed service provider, it has to be something that's understandable. I can tell you from working with auditors for many years, auditors like documentation, but what they like more is evidence that that documentation is actually being used. So they might give you a pass on not having your policies updated, but they'll definitely be giving you, accolades if you can show that the process, the procedure is actively happening, and that you can show evidence of that. What I also advise people to do is to take a look at the systems that you have in place now and see how they can be leveraged to fit these 17 domains. Quite a number of people will have something and they don't realize that they have, extra functionality. They've just never deployed it. So I always advise people, take a look at what you have in place and see how you can leverage that to fulfill your requirements for, monitoring the CUI and the systems that you have. And to take a look at, if you're using cloud infrastructure, then take a look at the offerings that your cloud vendors have. If you're using something that's stated that they're, CMMC, ITAR compliant, they're FedRAMP moderate, make sure that you're licensed to leverage all the things that they have. They could have an offering and you don't know about it. that will do extra auditing for you and give you, different reports or allow you to lock down access to certain machines. So take a look and see what's out there. There's a lot of free, low-cost solutions. There's vendors out there who will offer their cloud services, their software to small businesses free or for, again, a very low cost. They'll do that. They'll call that community editions. An example would be Manage Engine, for example. They will offer their patch management and their asset management software, their vulnerability management software, free to small businesses with like under 20, 25 machines. And there's other companies out there who will do, again, discounted services for small businesses. And I always encourage people to try that. Of course, not to be self-serving, but you can also reach out to cybersecurity people for assistance and help in dealing with this. There's a lot of people out there. You can find them at the CyberAB's website in their marketplace. And there's, a lot of companies out there who can, help you do the heavy lifting. You don't have to go through this alone. Whether you do this yourself or you get someone to help you, a key thing here is to train your staff to handle CUI. It doesn't make sense for you to do all of this work. You create your SSP and POAM, you do your documentation, you buy things and configure them to do all of this. Looking at the CMMC controls, anyone who's looked at the NIST 800-171 will see that a lot of these controls are not technical. If we could do all of this in software, we would be having this conversation because we would just buy things, configure them, and they would just run, and they would be protecting us. But we have human beings here, and quite a few of the controls involve administrative, operational procedures. So things will have to be done differently. Things will have to be done. If you don't train your employees how to handle CUI and FCI, then all of this is for naught. So coming out of this with what I always call a CUI handling procedure that distills everything down, all of the things that you've put in place, to a document that you can hand to your employees who are expected to handle CUI and say, when you get an email with an encrypted attachment and you've been told that this attachment is CUI, this is a schematic for our machine shop, this is what you do. This is where you unencrypt it. This is where you store it. This is what you do when you don't need it anymore. This is how you destroy it. This is what happens. And it needs to be that specific so you can move forward and know that while it's never going to be perfect, that your employees know what to do and how to safely handle CUI. And when I spoke in the very beginning, the DoD knows that this is a process. That's why the plan of actions and milestones is an important part of this, because they recognize that, this is not something you quickly snap your fingers and, can get done in a few months. This is a process. So while an audit, if you need to have one, is going to allow certain controls to be low priority controls to be on your POAM. The fact that they're talking about a POAM is in itself an acknowledgement that this is going to be something that over the years, you're going to be adding things to it, you're going to be subtracting, because your IT infrastructure is not a static environment. You change the systems that you're going to use, you get onto new contracts and you discover that you're going to need a different system to handle this. You go into a new line of business. You need to update a system that you've relied on because it's just not meeting your needs anymore, or even worse, the vendor's going out of business. Your POAM is there to be with you as time goes on, and it's meant to be a working document. It's meant to be something that you keep up to date. It's meant to be something that you look at when you do your annual risk assessment, looking at your IT infrastructure. Just remember that the tasks in your POAMs can themselves be like actual projects. So a POAM task may be update your accounting system, and that could take quite a while, months or even years, depending on the complexity of the system. But what this is designed to say is it's a process. Keep your score updated in ESPERS. That score is calculated, that is as part of your SSP and POAM. There's free calculators out there that, again, it's very simple to do. And remember, just keep working at it. This is not, the DoD has made it very, very clear that this is a process. So no one expects you to have a, quote, perfect score of 110. And frankly, I believe that a lot of companies, especially larger companies, are never going to get there. They're always going to have open POAM items. And I think that's realistic. So, Yasmin, maybe we can open this up to questions.
Yes, thank you, Melissa, for explaining that so well for us. Okay, so now's your opportunity to ask Melissa your questions. Anything you would like her to go over again that you may have missed in a presentation, or if you want some further clarification on anything, just type them in the chat box. Okay, so let me look through here and see. Oh, okay, we only seem to have one. Which companies offer free level 2 services to small businesses?
What I will do is send to you, Yasmin, I will send you some of the companies that offer the community editions.
Okay, great. So I'll once I get that, I'll share that with you. Is GFE available? GFE, is that government furnished equipment, I think? I'm not sure what that question is there, Dan, if you'd like to repeat it. Next question is, can you please confirm more about the audits? Does a person need to get an outside certified auditor, or can that be done internally by someone who is training in the 110-point checklist?
It requires, unfortunately, an outside auditor.
Okay. Can you explain more on the SPRS score?
That score, so all of the 110 controls have been assigned a criticality score by the DoD. And the score is either 5 for critical, 3 for medium, or 1 for low. So as you're going through all of the 110 controls, and if you say your first gap assessment is going to be going through and saying yes or no. Yes, I'm doing this, or no, I'm not. For every no answer that you give, you subtract the value of that from 110. For example, if I go through, if I'm doing this calculation for Kaizen, then I will go through and say, nope, not doing that, nope, not doing that, nope. And then I will calculate all the no's and the value of that 5, 3, or 1, and I subtract that from 110. Whatever is left becomes the score that the government is expecting all the contractors to put into ESPERS. The whole point behind putting a score into ESPERS is to assure the DoD that, yeah, you've actually done a gap assessment. You've actually sat down and, taken that first step to say, where am I in regards to level 1 or level 2 compliance? Even if and this is something that I personally don't think is correct, even if you're only shooting for level 1, that you're not expecting to have CUI, you still have to go through that, whole 110 controls to calculate your ESPERS score. What I'm hoping that they move towards is that you're level 1 and that your ESPERS score is going to be, all of the maximum, 17 controls, and that'll be it. But right now, the requirement, so the DoD is assured that people aren't just going, yeah, we're compliant. That you're actually going through everything, you're calculating your score, and you're putting it in there.
Okay, thank you. Let's see if there's any more questions. If we're not the prime on a contract with DoD, but are the sub, are we still required to be in CMMC compliance, or does that fall solely on the prime awardee?
Yes, you are required. Subs are required. Does not solely fall on the prime.
Okay, and there's a question about tax credits. Do you know if there are going to be any?
There are.
Because of the high cost of this?
Yes, state of Maryland does have a tax credit in place for people who buy security services, security products from qualified Maryland cybersecurity sellers. And I can send you a link on that.
Wonderful. Okay, that seems to be all the questions we have. So I'd like to thank Melissa so much for this great presentation. And I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. I will be sending you the recording and the presentation, and I believe Melissa's going to send me some additional information. I'll share that with you as well. So thanks everybody, and we hope to see you at a future Apex Accelerator event. Bye-bye.